Okay, welcome everyone to episode 9. I hope everyone is doing well today. Just a quick few announcements before I get started. I have a QR code, should be at the top left of your screens. That is a link to the Spotify. So if you want to watch previous episodes or anything, that should be there. Our online shop is open, so I have t-shirts and stickers available. That is going to close in about a week and a half or so. And then we'll get all the orders and stuff shipped out. Tonight we are joined by Frank Leeb. He's currently the managing director of the First Responder Center of Excellence. In 2024, he retired from the FDNY with over 31 years of service. He held numerous different ranks, such as the Deputy Assistant Chief, Chief of the Fire Academy, Chief of Training, and the Chief of Safety. He's also been a member of the East Farmingdale Volunteer Fire Department since 1983. He has a bachelor's degree in Fire Service Administration, a master's degree in Security Studies from the Naval Postgraduate Schools Center for Homeland Defense and Security. He was a member of the advisory panel for UL's Fire Safety Research Institute, Study of Coordinated Fire Attack Utilizing Acquired Structures project. He is the author of Cornerstones of Leadership on and off the fireground and was a presenter at the U.S. Fire Administrator Summit on Fire Prevention and Control in 2022 and 2023. Frank just recently joined CRACKYL as a minority owner and senior advisor. Did I cover everything? So yeah, is there anything else that you want to throw in there? I know that the CRACKYL thing is pretty new. So
yeah, CRACKYL thing is pretty good. First of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. I just think it is so cool to see a young firefighter caring enough and being engaged and involved enough to start his own podcast. And I know it took a little time on my end to get scheduled, and I apologize for that, but I just think it is so cool. And I am going to get you a couple of other guests, as I mentioned beforehand, that we're going to get you a couple of people on the show, and it's just really cool. That's why the fire service, the future of the fire service, is in such great hands when we have people like you. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things real quick, if you don't mind. I happen to be wearing tonight, I'm wearing my shirt from the Alamo Fire Conference. This was the second year. I was the keynote this year. And the conference was about 120 people. And Clayton, the guy who runs it, a San Antonio firefighter, and the rest of the team, that they do such a great job. And the training that they're bringing to their local area is just really, really good. And let me tell you, the majority of the people that were there, probably 90% of them, had less than 7 years in the fire service. So you hear a lot about how, recruitment and retention, and we have such a hard time in the fire service of getting the young firefighters engaged and to want them to do this job. And but the reality of it is, we just need to know where to look. And when we go to these small conferences, that's what we see. And there were 5 people that had under a year in the fire service. And I'm like, my goodness, if I only knew about some of these conferences when I first joined, and there weren't a lot of regional conferences back then, but it's just so cool. And, when Dina told me about you and your podcast, I immediately said, I'm all on board on this. I definitely want to do this podcast. I just think it's great what you're doing. So thank you for having me. With CRACKYL, it's a newer endeavor that I'm involved with. Corey Perrin, who started CRACKYL 5 years ago. It's a quarterly publication, also has an online app. The app is really, really good and getting better. And it's like a men's or women's health for the fire service with firefighting and fire tactics and strategy and those type of things, all kind of wrapped into it. So I really believe in it, because a healthy, well-trained, physically fit, knowledgeable firefighter is really our greatest asset. And I want to get you, as a 18-year-old, to be 50, 60, 70 years old and have enjoyed a whole career. And now you're a senior firefighter thinking about retirement. That's the goal. The goal of a senior firefighter is to make sure that junior firefighter becomes a senior firefighter. So again, I'm so appreciative to be on your show. So thanks for having me. And that was a little bit about CRACKYL. And another thing, I need you to write an article for CRACKYL.
Done.
And I want it to be what every firefighter should know from a new firefighter, or how to what you believe a firefighter should be. Because now you've had some experience, right? And you've had the guts to start a podcast, right? The courage to start a podcast. So now I need an article somewhere around 700 words, 1 or 2 pitches, and we'll get you published online. How's that?
That's perfect. And yeah, I would be honored to do that. I got a few things to say before we get started. Thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for coming on. I want to thank Dina for helping get this all set up. If it weren't for her, this would not have happened. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, I appreciate the kind words with everything. It definitely means a lot coming from, someone at your level. So it's not every day that I get to do this. So I appreciate that.
Say it at my age.
No, level, not age. Yeah, so we'll go first and then we'll see where this takes us. So what is your best advice to a young firefighter or any firefighter to make a lasting impact on their department?
Learn. So I'm going to give you the advice that I got from my first captain, Gene McGowan. I walked in wasn't even my first tour. I walked in the door to meet everybody. I got a couple of cakes, and so I knock with my elbows. I got all these cakes in my arms, and I get introduced to this captain, and he says, "Read something fire related every day." Something that I've always done, with the exception of a couple of months after September 11th, I have always read something. And now there's YouTube, there's podcasts, there's so many different ways. I listened to 2 of your podcasts today. I listened to Dina Alley's today, and I also listened to Tyler from Clearwater Fire Department, the lieutenant from there, and both fantastic episodes that you have. So there's no excuse not to be better every day by just doing that, right? Read something or listen to something fire related every day. The second advice that he gave me was to learn something from everyone you meet. Sometimes you'll learn what not to do, and that's important. That's an important distinction. And when you're a younger firefighter, you don't always know the difference. And I can give you an example of that later on, depending if we have time.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, definitely some good advice there. Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to pick the best route to take this. So before I have a feeling this is going to go somewhere else, but I want to get this quick question out of the way, even though it might not be a quick question. And this is more for my just a personal question. You spent time with the FDNY, probably the most respected department in the world, right? And then you spent time at a volunteer fire department. So kind of on this, both sides of everything. What are the biggest things that you would like to see for people on like the volunteer end? I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Like the major differences you see and how we as volunteers and full-timers can,
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing is professionalism is not defined by a paycheck. It's defined by an attitude. It's defined by your willingness to put in the work, to train to be better. Because it doesn't matter if you're in a career or a volunteer service, the fire still can wind up killing you. So one of the things that I can't stand to hear from a volunteer firefighter is, "We're just volunteers. Why do we have to do all this training?" We have to do all this training because you're doing a job that can kill you. So we're fortunate that you have volunteered, right? The volunteers in my volunteer department are amazing. They're dedicated. I think about my current captain, Matt Ryback, works a full-time job, works a part-time job, and the amount of time that he dedicates to training and being involved, like, that's really, really cool. But he's a professional firefighter because of his mindset and his dedication to training. And I could name 100 of these individuals from my volunteer department. But it's all about your mindset. In the FDNY, I would always say, the FDNY, we play to win on every run, every tour, every day. Losing's not an option. Well, I don't care if you're a career or volunteer. If you think that losing is going to be okay on the next call you go on, maybe this profession isn't for you. Maybe you need to go join the Knights of Columbus or another organization, because those organizations are great. They need members too. But if you're not willing to put in the work to be the best firefighter you can be, maybe this isn't for you.
Perfectly said. I think I need to clip that and then blast it over social media. Got a few comments that just wanna shout out. Dina says it's cool watching a couple of guys on both ends of their careers connecting and contributing to the service as a whole. And then, hi Chief Leeb, it's Michael. I'm 10-8 in North Carolina, watching you on YouTube.
Nice. Hello, Michael. Hello, Dina. Yeah, Michael. So I just sent the link to him. So I appreciate him tuning in. So Michael used to live in Elmhurst, Queens, which is where I was a battalion chief in the 4-6 Battalion. And Michael would always come to the firehouse, and I would always hang out with him when he was there. And his family took him to North Carolina, and his mom and dad drove him up for my retirement party, which I'm so appreciative of. And Mike's a good guy. So Mike, thanks for being on the show. And yeah, 10-8. So 10-8 in the FDNY means you're on the air and available. So that's good. After you finish up a job, you let the dispatcher know you're 10-8 and available.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I kind of got an interesting question. It's not super interesting, but I'm in the technical college right now, and I hear conflicting opinions from requirements from the state and then like real world operations. So I'm gonna ask you this: who is number one on the fire ground? And I hear a lot about conflicting answers. It's the victim or it's us as the firefighters. So I want to hear your opinion on that.
Well, so you could just look no further than how we actually operate on the fire ground. When a firefighter gives a mayday that he's trapped, what happens? All efforts go towards rescuing our own, right? So here's the thing, right? So if the firefighter is trapped, if the firefighter is injured or killed, then that firefighter is unable to save lives. So by virtue of that, if we want to protect the civilians, we put ourselves, our health and wellness and safety first, because that enables us to save people. So if we're reckless, we don't save lives when we're reckless. We're well trained, right? So safety is a byproduct of our training. If you're well trained, right? And Tyler, the lieutenant from Clearwater, said this on his podcast, right? That's safety is a well-trained firefighter. The safest firefighters on the fire ground are the best trained because they know how to size up and read smoke. They know to look at the wind direction. All of these different things. They know how to place a ladder. They know building construction. All of these different things enable us to save lives. So yeah, we're number one on the fire ground, but that doesn't mean we're not trying to save lives. We're trying to stay healthy and not get ourselves injured or killed, because when we get trapped, all efforts go to saving us. Show me a department that a firefighter gets trapped and they don't try and save him over saving civilians. And that tells you the answer to that question right there, because you could talk about it all you want and say, we put the civilians first. And yes, on the fire ground, we risk a lot to save a lot. I'll risk my life to save a civilian. But we should not be doing that recklessly. We should be doing that being well trained into the job to get the job done. And then we save lives, right? And in the FDNY, every year we rescue over 100 people, and recognize close to 70 of them at our medal day. So I just think our actions speak to what we actually do, and that is we're number one on the fire ground, but it's not like we're not trying to save the civilians. We have to stay safe to save them, right? That's basically it. But yes, the civilian lives obviously are critical important. That's why we do what we do, to save lives, whether it's on a medical run, whether it's on a fire, or whether it's on a bad car accident on the parkway or the highway. That's what we're here for, to save lives.
Well said. Yeah, I appreciate the explaining it. That definitely helps a lot. Let's see. I want you to talk a little bit about the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, which you all recently did. honoring was 176 firemen. So
yeah. So and thank you for that. I appreciate you bringing that up. So recently, the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation, along and in conjunction with the FDNY, hosted a memorial service that was done on Staten Island, and it was to honor 176 firefighters from the FDNY that passed away from 9/11 illness. So to date, there's been more than 400 FDNY firefighters that have passed away due to 9/11 injury. But there were so many that hadn't been honored that they decided to have this ceremony in New York. So annually in Emmitsburg, Maryland, which happens to also be where the National Fire Academy is, it's also where the office of the U.S. Fire Administrator is. It's also where the National Memorial is for firefighters. And that's where it's normally held every year. So Vic Stagnaro, who's the CEO, he runs the NFFF. He's responsible to make sure that memorial is done. And they decided to have it in New York. And it was just an incredible ceremony here. Several of my friends and people that I worked with were honored. I've been to the ceremony in Maryland, in Emmitsburg several times. It's something that every firefighter should experience. To go there and volunteer or represent your department, I think I know it's a very humbling experience. It's something that that all firefighters should experience. But yeah, hosting that in New York was really a fitting tribute for all of those families. And you mentioned the First Responder Center for Excellence, the FRCE, which I am the managing director. We're an affiliate organization of the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation, and we look at all of what I consider the blindside issues of firefighters: the health and wellness, the safety, all cancer, PTSD, sleep deprivation, suicide, all these different things. We train and we're brilliant at the basics, as we should, right? If you don't know how to stretch a hose line or throw a ladder or cut a roof or search for somebody, well, then, you're probably not training on some of these other ancillary issues that surrounding the fire service. But these are the issues that wind up sacking us, the blindside issues where we're not thinking about it. And then the next thing you know, you're diagnosed with cancer or you're having mental challenges. As Dina always points out, that it's not just the calls. There's so many other things that impact us. So how do we maintain that healthy career from age 18 all the way up until you're a senior citizen? That's the challenge, right? How do we do that? How do we make sure that you maintain your flexibility, your strength, and overall your resilience, right? Your ability to go on a call, see something that most people don't ever see in their life, and then be able to respond on the next call. That resiliency, and I know Dina spoke about it on her podcast. Some of the classes, the online classes that the First Responder Center for Excellence has now, they're no cost. You go on our website and you can take these on our learning management platform. And some of them, they're designed to preload coping mechanisms before you go on a call. They're also good for after to teach you some of the things that can help you. Again, it's about maintaining that resiliency your entire career. From day one forward, we even have a 40-day physical fitness class that you could take to improve your physical fitness. In the FDNY, the number one indicator, whether a new probie would pass probie school, was his fitness level or her fitness level. Not anything else. It was their fitness level. Because if you're not fit, that means you're probably not eating right. All these different things. You're not sleeping, and that impacts your ability to learn. So all of these different things and how they matter. It's all interrelated.
Got it. Yeah. That's well said. And I mean, I wish I could watch that or be a part of that someday. That's awesome. And I believe for the state of Wisconsin, at least, that the Courage to Be Safe class through FRCE is a requirement for any new firefighters. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I think, Dina says that there's a little feedback when I talk, so I'm trying to figure that out as well. So hopefully that is a little better. You wrote a book, Cornerstones of Leadership. Kind of how you got involved with that. What really fueled you to write that, and if you wanna go into that a little bit.
Yeah, so just the Courage to Be Safe. So that is a National Fallen Firefighter Foundation program that is required in several states. So that's a really good class as well. So I just lowered my mic, so hopefully that makes it a little better as well. So Cornerstones of Leadership. Well, so Pete Matthews of Firehouse Magazine asked me to be the keynote at Firehouse Expo several years ago. In 2021, he asked me to do it in 2022. I did the keynote. So he gave me the instructions. He said, I want you to talk about training and teamwork, and the rest is up to you. And at the time, I was like, it's not really an issue. People are training. In the FDNY, we train. It's part of our culture. It's part of our DNA. Training, teamwork, and mentorship are part of the FDNY's DNA. And it's also part of the DNA of my volunteer department. So I did the podcast. I did the keynote, and it was very well received. And immediately, I had a couple of people telling me, "You got to write a book based on your keynote and expand on it from there." And it was when Chris Stewart, who at the time was a chief officer in the Phoenix Fire Department, another person who would be a really good guest on your show, he's like, "You got to write." He really was convincing, and he even told me other books that were similar to the way I can do this. And the next thing you know, I wrote a chapter outline, and the next thing you know, I was writing the book. And eventually, I'm going to do an audio book. It was easier to write the book than it is the audio, because the audio has to be me doing it. And I've done a couple of chapters already, and I wasn't happy with them. So, because I can't, they're my stories, so I can't have somebody else do it. But the interesting thing is, it's my stories, but the book's not about me. It's about the different people who have impacted me along my career. And each of the chapters has a leadership lesson. I wrote some chapters that didn't really have leadership lessons, that were very technical. And my son, who was my editor and publisher, he was like, "Yeah, Dad, this chapter doesn't belong in here. It's good, but it's technical. It doesn't belong." I wrote about an escalator fire, and it was an emergency where a female had a foot caught, and it was very technical, and it was great. And if you wanted to learn how to extricate somebody, it's perfect. But if you want to learn about leadership, not so much. So that chapter was eliminated, reworked, and put in a different way. But these are just those. I've been so fortunate in my life. The leaders that I've had, especially in the FDNY, the FDNY has a deep bench, and there's just so many leaders, and you don't always appreciate how good the leaders are, because I never realized, that there's and I've heard several of my friends have said this, there's a leadership crisis in the fire service. And I'm like, well, the FDNY, I largely hadn't experienced it. The men and women that put on the FDNY uniform, you get to a chief officer position, you've passed so many different tests that you don't just get there by accident. In fact, earlier today, I stopped by a retirement party for a celebration for Butch McCarthy and for Rob McBride. Both of these guys, great individuals, great chiefs. Chief McBride, I worked with him for many years as a battalion chief. This guy, he did 12 years in the 4-6 battalion as a battalion chief, and then a couple of years elsewhere. Like, when you think about leadership, you think about, the amount of fires. So that firehouse, that's the Elmhurst Eagles. That is Engine 287, Ladder 136, and a 4-6 battalion. This is where I was telling you, Mike, the Elmhurst buff who's on, where he would come out. That firehouse goes out the door 13,000 times a year. They're getting the sets and the reps, and they're going to work. And Tyler was talking about that on his, about, that seniority is important if you know what you're doing with the seniority, right? That you're learning and you're being better. If you just repeat year 1 20 times, well, you squandered it. That's like the movie 50 First Dates, right? Where you're always learning, but what are you learning? The same stuff, because you haven't progressed. So if you're getting the sets and the reps and you're learning, then the time factor, right? You can accelerate your learning curve, where you can be a young officer, especially in both departments, in career and volunteer, because volunteer, you have to get the certification, and then you have to be voted on normally by the other firefighters, right? In the career service, when you're eligible, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, and you take the test and you do well, so you might promote when you're young. Or don't have a ton of experience, but it's what you've done in that time frame where hopefully you were into the job and progressed yourself to the point where you could accelerate that learning curve, because you really can. And even listening to podcasts and advice from other people, that's why, like, I can't wait to see what you are in 10 years from now, right? If you continue to do this podcast, I think there are other people that do podcasts, and like the research you do for the show, and then the knowledge and the friendships you gain from it, that you'll have a whole bunch of people that you can call and rely upon as you move through your career. My goodness, it's, like I said, I can't wait to see what you're doing in the fire service in 10 years.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. And yeah, everything about your book, I have not read it. I will be honest. I actually have that, and then 30 Fires You Must Know.
This is over.
So yeah, I was reading while I was doing research for this episode. I'm forgetting what website that it was on, but it was about a plane crash that you responded to post 9/11. And I know you had talked about some stuff with that. I know this is kind of a curveball, but if you don't mind kind of going into that a little bit, because that really spiked my interest.
Yeah, so just a couple of months after September 11th, I'm at my firehouse, Quad 270. We were a special operations company, and we were getting, it was early in the morning, right around roll call, 9 a.m., and we were getting ready to, it was our day, we were going down to the World Trade Center site to look for victims and help with the recovery. We did that on a rotating basis. When a firefighter that was going off duty came running inside and told us that a plane crashed. At the same time, I could hear the Queen's frequency lighting up with a lot of chatter going on. Like, something was definitely going on. And sure enough, we knew right away. And then we got the response to go on the first alarm, because it was in our response area. So we headed to the Rockaways, part of Queens, and you could see the column of smoke from a long distance away. I wound up learning a lot about the plane crash. In the years since, I read the final report that came out and everything, and they said they were overusing the rudder, and because the plane before them had wake turbulence, so they were stuck in the wake turbulence, and they started using the rudder. Anyway, one of the engines fell into one area of Queens, so that was an area that they were. I think it was in a gas station, so they were getting reports of a fire there. But the main aircraft crashed a couple of miles from there in Rockaway, Queens, and that's where we were responding. And I had my cell phone on me. Cell phones were fairly new, right? This was years, right? So the iPhone didn't come out in 2007, and here it is 2001. But I had a little flip phone, and I immediately called my wife, who was at home, and I said, do me a favor, put on CNN. And let me know if there's anything going on, if there's a report of planes missing or terrorist attack or anything. And she said, no, but they're confirming that a plane is down in Queens and that the military has scrambled fighter jets. And with that, I hear the fighter jets overhead. So they were protecting the New York airspace. The airspace was immediately shut down. And I had that info about that it was fighter jets before anybody else did. So I was relaying that, yeah, it's fighter jets. And we arrive on scene, and there's just fire everywhere. There's a whole bunch of houses on fire, and you can see the clothes in the trees, and it was just a real nasty scene. And we're stretching, we wound up stretching a hose line. There wasn't enough hose lines to put the fire out, and even with the amazing job that everybody was doing. And we put, we eventually we put the fire out, and with all the other companies, the FDNY put the fire out, and we did our small part, and you could smell the human flesh, and it smelled like the Trade Center site. It was just a terrible day. There was nothing good about that day, and we go back to the firehouse, and no one's talking. And I remember, when my tour was over and I went home, I'm just so upset because I was just so numb from it. But we didn't talk about it in the firehouse. We didn't talk about that response at all. And I went home and I was very upset with my wife. And not with my. I was very upset talking when I was talking to my wife, telling her that how emotionless I was after what I just saw, and and I was like that for a little while, where I was just emotionally drained, numb. I had nothing in the tank. And I think about that incident as a very young firefighter. An Avianca plane crashed in Cove Neck, Long Island, and I responded to that as a young volunteer. But it was, I was young. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just handing equipment back and forth. I didn't smell burning bodies. There was none of that. It was just a very different scene, and a lot of people survived that plane crash. And then I look at this other plane crash, this American Airlines in the Rockaways, where I think it was 269 or 270. I'm pretty sure it was 269 total, because some people on the ground were killed in that as well. And then I look at a fire that I was one of the incident commanders at, the Twin Parks fire in 2022. And I look at that fire, and the FDNY, we had counseling services there. Our units, our counsels were there that day. That before our units left the scene, we had counselors there to make sure that people were okay. And our chief of department at the time, Tom Richardson, he had the counselors respond. He responded. We transmitted the fifth alarm for relief, and on that, plus we had at that fire we transported more than 65 people. 32 of them were in cardiac arrest, which is still unfathomable. That I think about that, we had 32 people in cardiac arrest. 17 of them would pass away. Roughly half of them were children. So these are things you can't unsee what you've seen. So he called for the counseling unit while I was responding. And one of the things that has really stuck with me is that he had the counseling unit talk to me. So I had a ringside seat to the Herculean effort that the FDNY brothers and sisters were doing, both fire and EMS, both inside and outside the building. People doing CPR, mouth to mouth, the effort that they were doing to put the fire out inside, the first two engine 48 and the first two truck ladder 56, and the job that they did, and just and the battalion chief who was acting deputy that day, who's now a deputy, Jeff Bassinelli, who will eventually be a staff chief in the FDNY. That incident was in good hands with him as the incident commander, and as I mentioned, the deep bench of the FDNY. But that council that came over and spoke to me then called me the next day to follow up to make sure that I was okay. And I've never forgotten about that this guy cared enough our chief cared enough to make sure that the counselors were talking to all of us, including me, because I wasn't thinking about me, and to follow up the next day and to make sure that we were following up with all of our people. It's just something that has always stuck with me. And the FDNY counseling unit greatly expanded after the tragic day of September 11th. Now has so many peer counselors, and when other fire departments around the country lose firefighters, we offer to help, and many times we wind up going there to help them with the grieving process and to help their brothers and sisters out. And it's to have peer support and to have people that understand mental health and wellness is so critically important for every department. And that's my story. That was just up close and personal of what we need to do. But and you can take it a step further. We need to have help. We need to have help available. But every firefighter needs to have a basic level of knowledge of training, because we're the first responder for ourselves, and so is our families. So our families have to know what to look for, and so do our brothers and sister firefighters, because then they can look out for us. And that is so important. And that is part of what DINA teaches. That is part of what the FRCE teaches. That is part of what our online modules teach. But to wrap that all up, from how we were on that day, a couple months after September 11th in 2001, to where we were 20 years later, was light years better. And that is because of the leadership of the FDNY. That is because of guys like Frank Leeb, who retired out of the FDNY counseling unit. And now the fire service is so blessed that he continues to teach. And now Drew Kane, who leads the counseling service unit, he is an amazing individual as well. And he's continued to uphold that high standard and make sure that that we are taking care of all of our brothers and sisters, both active and retired, and their families as well. Just incredible how they continue to do what they do.
Yeah, that's I mean, I don't really have, words with that. I will say that, I think I talked about this with Dina on her episode, but being introduced and experiencing, the bad side of this job at a young age, and then having that community and like people just asking if you're okay, like made the world of a difference for me. And so I'm glad that is a positive change in the fire service. And I think that we definitely need more of that, because I know that is not the case everywhere. So yeah, again, just like thank you to you and Dina and everybody else that speaks up about that, because it definitely is like something that we have to talk about. Yeah, we can.
And it's pretty cool, right? The fact that you're talking about that is pretty cool. And if I recall on, I think it was Dina's episode, it was spoken about that, that your dad has had a pretty long career in the fire service as well. So, you've obviously grown up around it as well. And, I would imagine, just like every firefighter, right? It's you have your ups and you have your downs, and every day is not a good day, right? Every day is not a bad day, hopefully, but every day is not a good day. But it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to ask for help, because that's the resiliency that we're talking about, right? And sometimes just talking to somebody is just gives you that little bit of a mental reset. Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody. That's why the kitchen table in the firehouse is so important. Sometimes you just want to talk about it. Let's just talk about the call that we had, because you know what? It's not sitting right with me. And we may not need external help. The help I need is I need you to talk to me, brother. I need you to talk to me, sister, right? And let's just talk about it. And then over that cup of coffee. And, sometimes it just hits a little different. You're on a call and it reminds you of somebody, or maybe you just found out about, what's going on at home, right? There's so many different things that impact you. Again, it's not just the calls. There's so many other things that could impact us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely important to put emphasis on the importance of that. We can kind of stay on the train here of mental health. You wanted to talk about a conference in Iowa, I believe. So if you want to talk
a
bit about that.
Yeah, so next year, May 30th, and then June 1st and 2nd, or something, maybe 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. I'm 1st and 2nd, but it's going to be in University of Iowa, and FRCE are hosting this at the University of Iowa. The Sunday night when you come in, the opening reception is going to be at the football stadium. We're going to get a group picture on the field. We're going to do tours of the stadium. We're going to have an amazing lineup of speakers. I know some of them, but I'm not going to talk about those tonight. We're still figuring out the final lineup. Dina will definitely be there speaking. I can tell you that for sure. And we hope to get Frank Leeb there as well. Frank doesn't know that yet, though, so don't tell him. Although he'll probably see this podcast. But all kidding aside, it's all right if he knows. The second night, we're going to do an event at a local winery that supports firefighters. Actually, that's the first night of the conference. The second night, we're going to do an event at the local brewery that supports firefighters. And then after the second day will be a half day. And then we're taking a field trip to the Field of Dreams. So that's going to be really cool. And anybody that attends the conference, we're going to have a special limited edition commemorative challenge coin that you'll get as part of the conference. And anybody, and this is the first time I'm talking about this, anybody who goes on the Field of Dreams portion we have a special coin made up just for that trip as well. So there's so many good aspects. So that the social after hours, they're critically important, especially in a conference like this, because when you leave, I want you to leave with contacts in different departments that you can be able to call somebody up, and maybe they are just starting a program in their department, or maybe you just need to speak to somebody outside of your department. And sometimes, so it could be lonely at the top where you don't have, if you're the chief of department, you may not have a lot of other people to call because you may not want to speak about a problem that you're having with your health to your firefighters. So maybe you need to meet contacts in other places. That's the importance of social networking, social media, and events like this. But May 30th, the Sunday, is the opening ceremony, and then the 2.5 days of conference. It's going to be really good. Again, we're hosting it at the University of Iowa, and that will be a really good event. I'm so looking forward. We had this past year, we hosted it in Nashville, and it was a really good success there. We had a lot of really good speakers, and we're gonna even top it this year by adding an additional day onto the program. So, thank you for bringing that up as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope to be able to attend that. That sounds awesome. Let's see. Matthew Ryback says trains in mental health with a thumbs up. Trying to get
outstanding, and he's my captain. He's the guy I was talking about.
Oh yeah, okay. With the volunteer department.
Yeah, and he values training, right? He's on the podcast, right? He gets that. Learn something every day, right? That's so important.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Yeah, Dina, that would be awesome for sure. So I'm gonna also have to get some links to everything, to CRACKYL and to the conference in Iowa, so I can put that in the bio after all this.
Excellent. Then in another conference, while you're checking your notes, I'm talking about, I went to the Montana Fire Service Conference, and I was so impressed. I'll tell you what, in the parking lot, there had to be 40 different vehicles from different fire departments. And on social media, I posted about 15 of them. Like what the whole statement of we're stronger together, and they really get it. But this conference was in Butte, Montana, and Butte is a mining town, and the more than $48 billion of copper has been pulled from the hills there. In fact, it's considered the richest hill in the world, is one of their nicknames. And they've made copper kings, and copper kings are people that came there and wound up making a fortune there. But when you look at the mine workers, and I walked around in their area because they have a lot of relics and different things about their mining history all around town. And luckily, a couple of decades, they started preserving this. And there was a monument for one of the speculator fire, where over 100 miners were killed in that one fire. And then there was another monument that talked about, in a period of right about 100 years, that 2,500 people lost their lives in mining disasters, whether it was related, wherever it was, right? Whether it was cancer, whether they were killed in the mine. And you think about working conditions, and you think about how that ties into the fire service. Like, how is that even acceptable, losing 2,500 people, right? Where at some point you got to change the standards, right? And make it where we account for that. And to a large degree, I feel like that's where we are now when we think about mental health and suicide and cancer and cardiac, because we have done a great job. The American Fire Service has done an amazing job at lowering our on-scene deaths from collapse, flashover, all these different things, right? But we have done a terrible job of reducing our cancer rates, our suicide rates, our cardiac rates, and our responding to and from fire scenes. Mm-hmm. We still lose people off the fire ground at alarming numbers, and we have to pay attention to those the way we pay attention to on-scene. And 30 fires, you must know, is based on the on-scene fires. Mostly, is one, Danny Noonan's chapter, and the New York Telecom fire is an exception to that, where it's a cancer-related chapter. But we have to still continue to try and reduce the line of duty deaths on the fire scene and not take our eye off that ball. Let's not falter there, because we want to get that number as low as we possibly can every single year. But we need to get those other numbers to start coming down as well. And that's where we really have to focus some of our efforts that perhaps we hadn't been previously to the degree that we need to, in the urgency that we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. There definitely needs to be more of looking at the stress and the cardiac issues that we have. Like there's a lot of out of shape firemen that it's a risk and it's unfortunate. But yeah, we definitely have to pay attention to that. I was just going to ask about 30 fires you must know, and then you brought it up. So if you want to segue into that a little bit, I'm curious how you got involved with that. And I know it's hard to pick one fire out of 30, but what's one that if you can, recommend for just one chapter for everyone to read, what would that be and why?
Oh boy. It's almost impossible to pick one, as you said, but here's what I'd say. Everybody has a fast food restaurant. So read about the McDonald's fire on Valentine's Day in Houston, Texas. Everybody has a gym in their district, or a CrossFit gym, perhaps. So read about Scotty Deem and the San Antonio fire. Everybody's got a place of worship in their district. So read about the Ebenezer Baptist Church fire. Everybody's got a Knights of Columbus Hall or something similar. So read about the Knights of Columbus Hall. Everybody's got a private dwelling. So read about Keokuk, Iowa, and read about the fires in Maryland. There's 2 in 1 chapter in that. So it's actually, the book is 30 fires you must know, but there's actually 31 fires. Just don't tell anybody, because then we'll have to change the name to 31 fires you must know. So there's so many different fires, for what you have. If you have a bowstring truss in your area, well, then you better be reading about the Hackensack Ford fire. And if you're reading about that, hopefully you know about wall bombs and the firefighters that were killed in that truss. Well, that's not in the book. It's another worthy fire. Energy storage systems are coming, and to everywhere, right? So we think about batteries and Surprise, Arizona, and that chapter is important. There's so many that are very important in the book for different reasons, but I would say 2 things. I would say read the chapters that you have that type of structure in your area, and then I would say the book is laid out at January 1st through December 31st. Wherever you are in the year is where the chapter is. So if the fire was in December, that'll be a later in the book chapter. If the fire was in February, like the McDonald's fire, that would be earlier in the book. So I think those are the 2 ways to use the book. The drill on and train on the fires that you have that type of occupancy, but also make sure that you're looking at, if you're in the firehouse for drill, run the drill on the anniversary of one of these fires. And of course, the propane explosion in Buffalo and that chapter. I think, Mike Lombardo, who wrote the chapter for that. I think of Joe Loge, who lost his son as a Granite Mountain hotshot, and I've become friends with him. And so when you go on the 30 Fires website that accompanies the book, we've done a bunch of podcasts. We've been trying to feature all the fires on different podcasts, and we've done some of them. And that is a very powerful companion to the book as well. And when people develop PowerPoints on these, we put them on the website as well. So when people say, I don't know what to drill on, that book provides so much information, and the website provides so much information. And that book was born out of really Billy Goldfeder and myself. I'm good friends with him. He's been involved with the Secret List for a long time. He's involved on many national committees, and we'll just talk, and I'll be like, things that I joke around that my presentations can often be called things that piss me off. And historically illiterate firefighters piss me off. When I mention some of these fires, in your mind, something you should be thinking about. Okay, if I talk about the Back Bay fire in Boston, or the Diamond Heights fire in San Francisco, or Keokuk, Iowa, which I mentioned earlier, right away you should be thinking of the low intake, high exhaust, and you should be thinking of the potential of wind impacting the fire. So all of these different things, and some of these fires that we picked weren't as well known as some of the others. But we have to change that, where we learn all the watch outs for these, because these are types of structures that firefighters have lost their lives multiple times in similar situations. And we need to transfer the experience to you and your department so you don't have to suffer a catastrophic loss, a devastating loss that impacts generations of the department, and it impacts generations of the families. And having gotten to know several of the families that we've written about their loved ones, really drives that home. But what we saw is we would go in, Billy or myself, we'd have a conversation, be like, what pisses me off? I was in a firehouse. They have this beautiful plaque on their wall, and they have no idea why that firefighter is there, why that plaque is there. But there's been other places that I've gone in, and where I ask, and they know exactly what it's about. I remember I was in Aurora, Illinois, and there were a couple of plaques on the wall, and I asked, the brand new firefighters were there, and they knew exactly why. They knew all the details. The two firefighters in that, if I remember correctly, they were killed when a brick wall and a wall bombs collapsed. That can happen tomorrow in anywhere USA. And it was great because their senior firefighter who was there, Jeff Bryan, he was like a proud papa when they got the answer right. But I would expect that, because here is this firefighter, right, who's the informal leader in a firehouse. He's making sure the new firefighters know the history, that they're not illiterate to our history. Because when we don't know the fire service history, that's when we're more apt or bound to repeat that. And another example, I was in Arlington Firehouse in Virginia not too long ago, and there was a picture of a guy, like this was an old, like this had to be 100 years ago. And I asked the firefighters who that is. Who's that? Who's that? Is that the founder? Who is that? And they knew exactly who he was. They knew the history of him. And then after I left, they reached out to tell me more about him. Because then what they did was they told me, when they reached out to me, they said, we spent the next 2 hours after you left learning all we could about that firefighter. And they knew a decent amount already. But that's when we talk about culture and that mindset, that's what we're talking about. Is that not being happy with the status quo? When I was in Squad 270 as a firefighter, right, special operations, we'd have a tool on the rig. I remember we had a bottle jack, a simple bottle jack that we could lift a train or a car. And we called the manufacturer to ask. We wanted to know more about it than our procedures had, or more about it than we were able to get just from the owner's manual, because people aren't using it to lift trains. We did that with several of our tools, to the point where the manufacturer was like, we don't know. We never tested it to do that. But we wanted to know the tool better than anybody, and perhaps better than the manufacturer, but certainly better than other firefighters that were going to come on scene, or we wanted to know every single thing we could. And that was the mindset of the firefighters that I worked with. That's what it was about. And the group that I worked with there, it was it was a murderous row of great firefighters that I worked with.
That's awesome. It was you segued into everything there perfectly. Yeah, like I said earlier, definitely on my list for books to get. I won't lie, I have like 9 firefighter books. That like I get into like 6 or 7 pages, and then I'm like picking up the next one. So like I gotta get better at that.
Well, plus you're going to school, right? You're going to,
Yeah, I'm in college. I'm in college, so yeah.
Yeah, so your studies have to take, priority.
Mhm.
right? And then you get to the fire service books when you have time. But
Yeah.
so it's understandable. I'll cut you
Right.
a little bit of slack tonight.
It doesn't help. Like I'm in going for fire science, so it's that's at least a little better. I just started report from Engine Company 82, so I love that so far. Um, got a question from Matthew Ryback. I hope I'm saying that right.
You are. That's how you
Okay,
say it. Yep.
perfect. Says Frank, as a now old volunteer enjoying more cups of free coffee, what advice would you give the younger version of yourself at the beginning of your volunteer journey?
Well, that's a great question. So, as I mentioned, he's my captain in my volunteer department. His dad, who I'm lifelong friends with, his dad and his mom. So Matt's a second generation firefighter, and I joke around with him all the time. So in the volunteer firehouse, I could go up and just hang out, and we'll do this right. We'll get a bunch of the firefighters together. We'll put it on GroupMe. Hey, we're going to be going up for coffee this morning at 9 a.m. And the next thing you know, 5 or 6 people show up, and uh, and we'll have a cup of coffee. And what happens? We get a call. So I joke around that there's no such thing as a free cup of coffee, because I'm going to go and have that coffee, and then I'm going to go on 2 or 3 calls. So I could have just went to 7-Eleven and got that coffee for $2, and instead I went on 4 hours of calls. But that's the whole point, right? That's what they want, because you get a faster turnout. We build friendships from that, whether it's Matt Ryback coming up, or Paul Partain, or Spo, or Joe, or Joe Greco, or Jim Yeasley. Like, you think about these the brothers that come up all the time, and then next thing you know, we're getting on the fire truck, and that happened recently, where next thing you know, there's a call, and one of the senior members is there, Mike Kilbridge Senior, and he's driving the truck, and a couple of others are on the rig, and we're joking around even then. Yeah, that was our free cup of coffee. Well, I had two cups for free that day. So, but still, then next thing you know, you're doing it. But I didn't even answer his question. I'm like a politician. So what advice would I give? Well, so when you're young, you think you're invincible, and the reality of it is you're not. So maintain your flexibility, maintain your resiliency, and pay attention to how you do that. Flexibility is maintained by stretching and making sure that you do that as much as you can. Stay hydrated to the degree you can, and it always goes back to try and be better be better every day. Be better than you were yesterday. Be better today. Be better tomorrow. You're not the same version of yourself now than you were 10 years ago, and and for you. That's why I said I can't wait to see what you are in 10 years, because you're going to just get better and better and better. So that's my advice, and enjoy every moment of the journey. Don't rush it away, and just understand that no matter where you are in the fire service journey or where you are in life, you're a leader in some aspect of your life. And in the fire service, once you have somebody that has less time than you or is a newer member than you, you are now a leader to a degree that you have some responsibility and ownership to make that firefighter better, because that firefighter being better is going to make you better, is going to make the whole team better, is going to really strengthen the fabric of the fire service. And that's really the key to that. So recognize that leadership takes many, many different forms: formal leader, informal leader, and we need to be making sure that we recognize that and learn about leadership at a young age in the fire service as well. So I gave you a lot of answers to that question.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's well said again. I was just gonna segue into leadership and instructing. So yeah, so I want to ask some tips for leaders and instructors, but more focused on when a person is, I don't think eligible is the right word, but when a person knows that maybe they could start instructing. So for me, at least, like, I would never try to like teach someone or instruct someone in like a way, because I know like I have less than like a year on as like an actual firefighter. So like I don't think I have enough time or experience to like try to be an instructor. So like what are some tips for knowing when you've reached that, or if like that's even how that works? I know that question is all over the place, but
Yeah. So you're never. That's a great question. You're never going to think. You're never going to think you're ready to teach, and you're never going to think you're ready to promote. Right. I remember when I got promoted to lieutenant. I had 10 and a half years. I had worked in some busy places, and I didn't feel like I was ready. And I think knowing that, right, recognizing that you don't know everything, that you don't know what you don't know, there's unknowns. So that's a superpower, to recognize that, to just constantly try and be better. And then for a new instructor, outside, so in my volunteer department, I've been an instructor for a while. Smaller classes, usually you know the people, which knowing the people doesn't always help you, right? They just break your chops. But in the FDNY, when I really, probably the first formal teaching position I took was when I was in special operations, again in Squad 270, and I volunteered to teach at the Technical Rescue School. And I volunteered to teach ropes. And the reason I volunteered to teach ropes is because I wasn't good at it. And I was pretty proficient in a lot of other topics. So what I wanted to do was go there. And as they're teaching this class, I'm learning from these master instructors. And the next thing you know, I got good at ropes. And you know, in short order, I got very good at ropes. And that was really how, but it was really, it was about being comfortable being uncomfortable and recognizing that I didn't know how. You know, tying a knot, I wasn't good at. And the next thing you know, we have one of the things we do is the Con Edison smokestacks. I don't know if they still do it, but we used to, for confidence in our equipment, we would slide down this water tower, the stack I meant, and it was like 300 feet in the air, which doesn't matter if you're 50 feet in the air or 300 feet in the air. If your equipment fails, you know, dead is dead. The only difference is you'll have enough time to catch your breath and scream a second time from that height. But I remember we were doing it, and we're inverting them upside down, and the confidence I had in my ability and my skills to do this really changed, and that just led to me teaching other topics, both in the FDNY and now. Even when I first got promoted to battalion chief, I'm a brand new battalion chief. I'm very into the job. I had just under 20 years in the FDNY, and we were going to do FDNY battalion. We were going to do chief officer education day, and I volunteered to be one of the instructors. And one of the topics was going to be fire dynamics and fire behavior, which, you know, I had been teaching with UL and was very versed in a lot of the UL studies. And the other people that were doing the instructing, especially George Healy, who's a deputy chief in the FDNY, like, this guy was like, you know, way ahead with his knowledge. And so were some other guys, John Cirillo, Jerry Tracy. There were a few others. So I wasn't in a lead role. And I had a small portion that I would teach every day. And I would tell the chiefs that were there, I'm like, I'm here because I want to be better. And I said, I'm learning more being here every day than you are being here, because I'm learning from all of you. There's 40-year chiefs coming through. And I was proficient at this one little topic that I was going to teach them. Was I teaching them how to size up a fire? No. But guess what? They were teaching me that. They were teaching me all these little things, both during the class and the questions they asked and their input, and then on the breaks and at lunch. And it was invaluable. And then I got to know the majority of the chiefs. And it was such an amazing experience. And it was just, be comfortable being uncomfortable, but along the way, you have to have some humility. And, you know, I didn't come across as knowing it all. I was very humble and very appreciative, knowing that as much as we were pouring into them to teach them, and they were being respectful, but boy, they were pouring their knowledge into me far more than they even recognized. And there's so many examples of that during the class when these senior chiefs would come through. And oftentimes after the day of the class, I would tell them, I'm like, thank you for participating the way you did. I said, you made today's class so good. And I said, I took away 10 nuggets that will make me better. And guess what? I'll pass them on tomorrow. Other chiefs, and that cross-pollination of knowledge, which is something I do when I go and speak now. When I go and I almost never do the same. Actually, I never do the same presentation twice, because I'll learn something in Butte, Montana, and the next thing you know, at the Alamo Fire Conference, I'm talking about it, and then I'll be in Maryland this coming weekend, and then I'll be at Science to the Station in Colorado next week, and the next thing you know, all of this knowledge, this cross-pollination, the things that I'm learning, I don't have to know it all, but man, I am a learning sponge. And if you have something that I should be learning or you want to teach me about, I am always listening. There's another great piece of advice. Be a learning sponge as a young firefighter. Actually, be a learning sponge at any point in your career. I'm still learning things.
Yeah, exactly. I was told at a young, when I first was 14, eyes open, ears open, mouth shut, and then the exact same thing. Just be a sponge always. And yeah, I mean, I definitely get that. Like, I hear a lot of instructors that say that they're learning just as much as they're teaching. So that's definitely awesome. I got one more question on my list here, if you don't mind. Moving up the ranks, something that you are familiar with. So, going from that probationary firefighter to everything else up to the deputy assistant chief. If you kind of want to go through that, and then I know kind of just talked about that, but like knowing when you're ready, if you know you're ready, or is it just something that's just thrown at you and you just go with it?
For when to promote in particular?
Yeah.
So when I promoted to lieutenant, I thought I studied myself out of a good job. I wound up. I worked in an amazing company, and the next thing you know, I'm in an area where I don't know anybody. So the jokes aren't funny around the kitchen table because I don't know the people that they're talking about. But eventually, you get to the point where you love the people you're working with. And I mentioned earlier I was at that retirement party I was at, and I was talking to one of the guys there, Brian Boos, and he was talking about that. He's like, I loved working in the Bronx. I hated to leave the Bronx, and then I go. And I work in Elmhurst, and he was a lieutenant in Elmhurst. And he's like, and then I work with a great group there. And it's like, you just got to be comfortable with the changes in your life, the next chapters, right, and know that it'll work out. Just slow down and take it easy and learn. So I was ready to be promoted to captain because it's similar. There's a lot of similarity to lieutenant. Being promoted to battalion chief was very different because now you see the fire scene from a different vantage point. Your sphere of influence expands, but so does your sphere of responsibility, right? So it's just about knowing that you have to continue to progress. That you haven't arrived anywhere. You just need to continue to be better because everything's evolving, right? The world is evolving. I mean, we weren't talking about energy storage systems. We weren't talking about lithium-ion batteries, driverless cars, drones. We weren't talking about any of this 10 years ago, and now we're talking about it everywhere. They still sell gas-powered lawnmowers, but nobody buys them, right? Everybody's buying lithium-ion battery-powered, even lawnmowers. So you think about like so many things have changed, and if we haven't evolved, you become a dinosaur. And being a dinosaur in our profession is really when we lead. That's what. Those folks have oversized impact on the fire ground. Those slugs in our organization that are not well trained and into the job. And there's nothing worse. I mean, you think about that. You go to a fire and it's ventilation limited. It's a private dwelling, and you're in there searching because the incident commander knows what he's talking about. He understands his strategy because he's current or she's current. And then a firefighter arrives on scene that hasn't gone for training. That slug firefighter, and that firefighter starts taking the windows, and you're inside, and now the whole ventilation profile changed, and now it's a flashover, and now the chief's strategy for how he was going to fight this fire has gone out the window. Now you're in a bad way. Now we're not worried about searching for victims anymore. Now we're trying to rescue our firefighters, and that's all because one firefighter can have an oversized impact when they're the slug firefighter. So everybody needs to train to be the best possible firefighter that they can be.
That's perfectly said.
And then the other point on that, one other quick point, we need good people to promote.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard on one of your previous episodes that one of the questions was, what do you do when somebody doesn't want to be a leader, right? Because guess what? Everybody loves the back step. There's no better place than on the nozzle, right? The nozzle position is the best position on a fire ground. Anybody who says any other position has never had the nozzle at a fire, especially a good fire. Because at a good fire, nobody's doing anything but watching the nozzle firefight, right? The truck's not going past in a well-involved room. The truck can't get past, right? So they're watching the nozzle firefight. So that's the best position. So you promote yourself out of a good job every time you promote. But if good people don't promote, we wind up with organizations with leadership that are slugs, and that's when morale suffers, training suffers, culture suffers. So one of the lines I use with people that are senior in the organization, and maybe they're for a deputy and they're thinking about even going to staff position. And I say, it's not always about you. If your organization has been good to you,
let's see here. He just froze. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Be the salt. Yeah, true that. Yeah, Frank's frozen. He was spitting too. He was preaching some good stuff. All right. Well, we will wait
in the most important position.
All right. Well, Frank's gone, so hopefully he'll be back here soon. Yeah, no, definitely. I don't think any good leader ever feels ready yet, for sure. I mean, hopefully. This is weird. Now I gotta think of something to say to fill the silence. I did get through all my questions though, so I did not think that was going to happen. Is that a question for me or for Frank? There we go. Okay. Let's see. Should be back here. All right. All right. Well, I will answer that quick. Okay. Hold on. Maybe. I will answer that. All right, we'll try that.
Am I back on?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you see me?
Yep, I can see you. It's yeah. I removed your computer one, so it shouldn't echo or anything.
Okay. So should I leave it like this or like this? Which way is better?
Yeah, that way. Perfect.
Okay. I switched to my phone. I don't know what happened.
All right. Yeah, no worries. So to Matt's question, my dad was still is involved with the volunteer fire department. So they offered a cadet program for 14 to 17-year-olds. So I did that, and I learned a lot. I got to watch a decent amount of interesting fires, and kind of not being involved so much with it, but just kind of stand back and watch. I learned a lot. So I definitely would definitely credit all of that to my dad. Being around that, it's something that I can't let go. So yeah, and then so I turned 18 10 months ago now. I was able to take all that training and everything that I learned and apply it to some fires, and now I'm 2.5 hours away from home, so I don't quite have that the fun of going to a fire anymore, but hopefully that changes soon. So yeah, that's how I got involved with the volunteer stuff. I think a lot of people's answers go back to their fathers, so I'm super proud of mine, and yeah.
That's awesome. I love stories like that. And you're right. I mean, there's so many second and third generation firefighters. I joined my volunteer department because of my brother.
Okay.
My brother joined first, and he was 10 years older than me. So that's where I got my start in the fire service. So
Awesome.
yeah. So it's great. And now my daughter Jessica is in the fire service, and I'm incredibly proud of her. And she's also a career fire marshal. So and she happens to be the mother of my granddaughter Lily. So that's pretty cool too. But yeah, good stuff. That's what it's about, right? And because you
Yeah.
come into the fire service and you have an understanding of what the fire service is about, because you have family or friends in it. And
Hmm.
just when you have family, right? You've been around it for so long. You've been around it your entire life, and
Yeah.
so has my children have been around it my entire life as well. And again, the cool thing is some of the friends that I have that I was friends with their parents, and now I'm friends with the kids as they're older as well. And to see how how they've progressed in their career and how they've become leaders is pretty impressive as well.
Yeah. No, it's an experience that it's hard to explain. Like, I feel like I was kind of a a cadet since I can remember. Before even like being voted on the fire department, like knowing where everything is on the trucks, knowing everybody. Like, it's an experience and a feeling that is hard to describe to someone that hasn't experienced that. Um, so yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate
totally
your,
agree.
yeah, I got through all of my questions, which I didn't think I did, so I'm happy about that. If anybody has anything else, go ahead and throw that in. Is there anything else you want to throw out there or shout out, anything else like that?
Yeah, just I'm so appreciative again, right? So if you download the CRACKYL app and you see the articles, I wrote an article this past week about the experience in Butte, Montana that I was talking about the future of the fire service, that we just have to know where to look. That's going to be published this coming week. So you can see that. And I write a lot for them. I enjoy writing. That's the result of my education at the Naval Postgraduate School, which I encourage people to attend. As that there's several different programs, and for the fire service, there's a couple programs that are geared for the fire service, and they don't cost you anything other than a lot of time and study. But yeah, like I said, the fire service is in good hands when we have people like you and others that I spoke about tonight, and it's a pleasure to be on tonight's show. And thank you for Dina Alley for letting me know about you and your podcast. And I'll get, I mentioned Chris Stewart. I'll connect you to him if you like. I'll connect you to Chief Ike in County Fire Tactics, and uh, I'll get you even more. Maybe you know what? I'll reach out to Corley Moore. He does firehouse vigilance, and
Yeah,
he just retired from his department. So there's three names for you that I'll connect you to. And now
perfect.
that I said it on your podcast, they're not gonna have they're gonna have to say yes.
Right. I talked to Corley probably a few months ago now. He hit me with the once you hit 20 episodes to let him know. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. And yeah, thank you for everything and coming on. And thanks again, Dina, for that. Um if anybody wants to contact, reach out to you if they have any other questions, what's your preferred method there?
They could. So social media is pretty easy. Whether it's Facebook at Cornerstones of Leadership, Frank Leeb at on LinkedIn, FireFrank76 on X. So I'm pretty easy to contact by any of those methods as well. First responder consultant at gmail.com is my email as well. So yeah. I'm not that difficult to get in touch with.
Awesome. I just downloaded the CRACKYL app, so I'm going to get all that situated after this. So yeah, thanks again. I don't have any other questions. I really appreciate that. I had a lot of fun. We'll definitely later down the road, I'm gonna start repeating some guests for sure, because I always like, tomorrow and the next week I'm gonna think of more questions that I should have asked you. So
I
yeah,
want to
thanks
come
again.
back for episode 50 or 100.
Okay, perfect.
How's that?
I'm writing that down. All right, yeah. Well, yeah, thanks again. And yeah, like I said, I got t-shirt and stickers in online. There should be a link on Facebook and Instagram. So that'll close in about a week and a half or so. And then the QR code is for Spotify. If nobody caught this live. So yeah, that's all I got. And again, I appreciate it. I don't think I could say thanks enough.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, and thanks everyone that was in the chat. It makes it a lot easier, and I appreciate that. So yeah, we'll talk to you guys later.